Good to see you again. This is Mr. A, and I am going to walk you through a Photoshop tutorial on cutting out figures and then putting them into a new environment. So, to start with, we have our figure here, this gentleman with the beard, and I'm going to take him, cut him out, and put him into this environment and make it look like he should be there, or at least as close as I can. So, to start, just like before, I'm going to take this background layer, going to duplicate it with the new layer icon, take the locked one, and trash it. So now we can edit this one. I'm going to use the regular lasso tool, and as we start going around the outer edge of this person, you'll notice at the bottom here that it's blurred, and then it gets a little sharper as we go up towards his face. So when it's really blurry, we're going to be further inside because we don't want to get that fuzzy edge. We want to have a nice clean edge when we cut him out. Now as it gets less blurry, we can get a little bit closer to that edge. And as I get right here, I always make my selections in chunks. So obviously I can't go any higher. I'm at the very top of the screen, so I'm just going to loop back around, go back to where I started. And now we have the dotted line that's moving around here showing our selection. My teachers always called that the marching ants, so I'll just call it that, just to keep things simple. As we move up here, we want to continue on to make the rest of the selection around his head. To do that, since we already have our selection here, I'm going to zoom in because we're going to start getting more detailed. We don't have to get every single little strand of hair because this is a hairy dude. But you'll notice that when I'm on the inside of this selection, the arrow turns white. When I'm on the outside, it just shows a regular lasso tool. So we're going to start on the inside, and if you hold Shift down, you'll see the lasso icon come up with a plus symbol next to it. That means that I can start drawing again and add to this selection that I already have. So I'm going to do that. Holding Shift, I click down, and after I start drawing, I can let go of Shift. But now I'm going to be adding on to that selection. You just kind of go along the edges here. And I mentioned this in the last video, but I'll mention it again here. I am not using a mouse. I'm using a stylus and a tablet. So that makes it a little bit easier for me to go through this. If you have a tablet, I highly recommend using that instead of a mouse because it's just a little bit more comfortable. So anyway, we're going to continue this process. I'm going to hold Shift, add more, and as I go along, like I said, we aren't going to get every strand of hair. I'm just going to go for the main body, like the main edge here of his hair. One thing I've noticed over time is that people don't tend to see all of those details. You can spend the time to go for it and get every strand in your selection, but at the end of the day, only people like you and I are going to zoom in and be like, ah, he didn't get every single strand of hair, jeez. Or she's a bum, why didn't she work harder? Anyway, so we keep continuing along, getting this last part of his hair. Now, when we get to the glasses, I'm going to keep following the outermost part. So I'm going to stick around the outside here. Wow, I really went off there. Hang on, let me add. There we go. Now I'm going to go across the outer edge here. Now, before we continue on down there, we have this space in between his face and the outer rim of the glasses. So up until now, we've been adding to our shape by holding Shift. See how that plus mark comes up whenever I hold Shift? Now, if you hold Alt on your keyboard, a minus symbol should come up next to your lasso tool. This means that you can start drawing, and just like a cookie cutter, you can remove a piece of the selection from the inside. So now when we get to the very end there, this piece won't show. Alright, so let's get the bottom of his chin here, the rest of his beard. His epic beard. Okay, And now, since we're back to the body, we don't have to be so zoomed in. We can just hold shift, continue along the edge, and we're getting back into blurry territory, so we want to drift a little bit further inside. And now we just go all the way back, and we have completed the selection of our figure. Now, if I were to click delete right now, we have him selected, so he gets deleted. The way to delete the background, but not him, is to invert your selection. The quickest way to do that, there's a shortcut on your keyboard. You can hold Control, Shift, I. If you do it in that sequence, you'll notice how now we have the selection on the outer edge. It's still around him, but now we have everything around him selected. It took our selection and reversed it. So now everything but him is selected. So if I hit delete again, now that everything's been inverted, the rest of the background gets deleted. We can now hit Control D to deselect what we've already touched. Now if we zoom in and look, that's what I was talking about with his glasses. When we hit Alt, we actually removed that piece between his face and the rest of his glasses. So we have our bearded hipster guy cut out. Now we're going to put him into the other photo. The way we do that is we hit Control A, and that's going to select everything. Think of it as Control All. So once you have everything selected, you'll hit Control C to copy. We'll go to our new document and hit Control V as in Victor. And that's going to paste him in. This is where all the fun stuff happens. So you can kind of place him where you want. I'm going to put him right here. Well, yeah, he's in the road, but well, we'll just skip that. We won't think about that. So he's in the road, but you'll notice that the background image and him, it looks like they have different lighting. It's close, but it's not quite perfect. So the way we can fix that is we make sure that we have the layer selected that he is on, and we do. And you'll see this circle down here that's half black, half white, split down the middle. That is your fill and adjustment layer options. So we can click there. You have all these different options. We're going to focus primarily on curves, levels, and then hue and saturation. We'll start with curves. So once this comes up, curves means you can mess with a lot of different things going on, like pretty much the light and dark, but it also messes with color value. But most of the time, you're going to get the best result if you take your first point, drag it a little bit down, then up towards the middle, you bring a second point back to the original line. So it kind of makes an S curve. Now, we want it to just affect him and not the city background. So we can do that if we go over here by our layers and we hold Alt on the keyboard. If we drift in between those layers, you see how my icon changes from a hand into that box with a down arrow? When that icon turns to that, you click. Suddenly, the curves are only affecting our guy. If I turn them on and off, you can see the slight change there. So now that we have that, we're going to go back to our adjustment layers. Now we're going to add a levels layer. Once this comes up, you'll have three main notches, three main arrows that you can grab. The left arrow controls darkness. The right arrow controls light. And the middle arrow drifts between both. So what I do is, you'll notice the color information and the light information comes up just barely as this little white info right here. Before, the black or the dark arrow was all the way to the left. I started it where that information starts to show. Same thing with the light arrow. As soon as we have some more info, that's where I leave it. And then the middle arrow you drag until things are looking a little bit more correct. So I'll leave that there. And some of this just comes down to eyeballing. I'm going to go back to our adjustments layer. Now we're going to select hue and saturation. From here, hue and saturation, you can do a lot of cool stuff. We could turn him into, a blueberry, a Smurf, make him green, orange, whatever you want. But I'm not interested in changing his color. What I'm interested in is that his color is popping a lot compared to the background. So I just want to desaturate his color a little bit. See how it goes dry, almost black and white if I go all the way to the left. And if I go all the way up, then it's really trippy. So we're just going to go a smidge to the left, just a little bit. And now it already looks like he's more a part of this picture. And that's just because we're using these adjustments layers. If you'd like to stylize it from this point, you can create a new layer at the very top. So we have our background of the city, our guy, our adjustment layers, and then at the top, I just created a new blank layer. Now, if we go to our fill bucket, there's 3 options here. The gradient tool is what I'm going to use for this little trick. I have my opacity up here for the gradient tool set to 33%. That's just what I normally do so that I can add in pieces if I want to. And what we're going to do is make sure that, if I can hover over it so you can see it, hang on here, this square right here, it's the linear gradient. You want to make sure that that's selected. Click the drop down, and here you'll have a bunch of different color options for your gradient. I'm going to choose purple and orange. Once that's selected, and we have our new layer selected as well, I'm just going to drag from the bottom right corner all the way up to the top left corner. Now when I let go, it's going to create a gradient from those 2 points. Now it's just a slight gradient, and it kind of looks a little strange. But something we can do is, while this layer is still selected, we go up, and there's different blending modes. Right now it's set to normal by default, but we can select any of these different blending modes. And I'll go through those. A quick way to do this is you make your selection, and then you can hold Shift after you've made that, and down or up to cycle through them. Now, I think just as you go through them, you can see the different kind of feel that they introduce and what you might want for your image. Personally, I kind of like soft light. It may not seem like much, but if we take it away, you can see how it alters the color, I think, in a beneficial way to stylize it a little bit. But those are the steps. As soon as you're wrapped up with all of that, you just go to your file and save it out as any file type that you want. Always be sure to save your work often. And that is the end of this tutorial for cutting out a figure and putting it into a new environment. I hope you enjoyed it, and good luck.